Hey guys, this is Gossip Girl PK, and today's video is going to be a conclusion, if you will, of the 1 month 1 shadow challenge. For the month of May, I challenged myself to create as many looks as possible with the Jaclyn Hill palette, and today I was hoping to just officially conclude it by sharing my thoughts, my overall experience with you guys, looking back at some of the looks that we created using the Jaclyn Hill palette, and finally give you my final thoughts on the Jaclyn Hill palette. So let's jump right in. But before we get into the video, just a polite reminder, if you haven't done so already, to hit the subscribe button down below and give this video a thumbs up to let me know that you care. Alright, so I created some 15 to 20 looks this month using this palette, and some of those looks are still not up even though we are in June. Please bear with me, but they'll soon be up. But the point is, initially I wanted to create somewhere between 22 to 25 looks, and I literally had them laid down and planned out on a piece of paper. But honestly speaking, when I started off with this challenge, I didn't even realize that halfway through the challenge we would be in Ramzan. And Ramzan's routine is just so different than any other time of the year that your everyday regular tasks are just bound to get disrupted a little bit. Not to forget, you just don't have the same amount of energy anymore. And just makeup, beauty, skincare, it's just not on your priority list anymore. Trust me, I haven't put my skincare on in more than 2.5 weeks. And you could totally tell I'm just having breakouts, my skin's growing out a lot of texture, and it's just not a very pretty situation over here. So 1 month, 1 shadow was not the only thing to get off of track. And long story short, I just couldn't create as many looks with this eyeshadow palette as I initially wanted to. And if I still continue working on this palette, I could easily create at least as many looks as I've already created using this palette. That's how versatile it is. But anyways, as far as the overall experience goes, I don't know if I'll be able to find the right words to really express and fully grasp my overall experience with the 1 month 1 shadow challenge. But if I had to describe it in 2 words, it would be eye-opening and inspiring. Okay, that's 3 words, but you know what I mean. It was eye-opening and very, very inspiring at the same time. It was just such a weird in such a weird way, it was so satisfying and relaxing not to fuss around with so many different eyeshadow palettes and to focus on just one. It made things simple not to really worry about which eyeshadow palette I want to use today. So that was different. And you know what the best part for me with this challenge was? The best part was not to be tempted to buy new eyeshadow palettes. I know that sounds crazy, especially for me because I am an eyeshadow junkie. If there's one thing I have absolutely no self-control over, that's eyeshadow palettes. I could be on a very strict makeup no buy, and then it just takes one delicious, beautiful looking eyeshadow palette to absolutely break my resolve. And it's not like I haven't been following brands or I don't know what new eyeshadow palettes have recently come out. I mean, if you guys have been following me for any amount of time, you already know my obsession with Viseart eyeshadows. And they recently came out with a bunch of beautiful eyeshadow palettes. Then Manny just released a new eyeshadow palette that's a nice combination of neutral shades and pops of colors. The Colourpop new Perception palette, oh my god, that really got me. That's such a beautiful palette. So I mean, I have been following brands. I know what new eyeshadow palettes have been coming out, and some of them really pulled me in. They really caught my eye. But working on the 1 month 1 shadow challenge made me realize how much we can do with what we already have and how we don't need to constantly give in to our temptations. I still consider myself a fairly new YouTuber, and I'm still searching for what kind of YouTuber I want to be. And you know what's funny? It made me realize I just don't want to be one of the kind of YouTubers that I personally watch. Don't take me wrong. I don't watch all YouTubers all the time. I have a very limited selection of YouTubers that I watch, and I love them. I love and trust their recommendations. They're fun to watch and they definitely have their place on the internet. But they just make me keep buying more and more makeup. They've created a void of makeup in me that's just never fulfilled. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I have more makeup than a dozen ordinary girls combined. And I'm still not satisfied. I still want more. And working with the 1 month 1 shadow challenge made me realize how unhealthy that is, how that's so unnecessary. And so I was inspired to become the kind of YouTuber that makes you happy with what you have, no matter how little you have in your collection. Because you could totally have people like me who have just so much makeup and they still want more. And then you could have people who have just one of each item and they're perfectly happy and satisfied with what they have and they don't want any more. So I definitely want to be one of those people. I don't know if that makes any sense. And I'm not saying I'm never going to buy anything again. Let's just not jump to conclusions like that. I'm just saying I want to be more responsible in what I buy and what I recommend you to buy. So anyways, this has been such a refreshing and eye-opening and inspiring experience for me, and I love to do more challenges like this one in the future as well. Alright, so let's quickly talk about the magic that we were able to create using this palette. But first thing first, I want to ask people, how are they getting their palettes so dirty? I mean, I've looked at some palettes online and it feels like someone played Holi with those colors. It's just so messy. And I'm not a very tidy person. Ask my mom, she'd love to tell you. I do disinfect and clean my makeup every 5-6 weeks. But I mean, my makeup is not the YouTube standard clean, the kind of clean makeup you see on different YouTube channels. And it's still a pretty dirty palette, don't take me wrong. I'm not trying to sound a very neat freak here, but I mean, what are you doing with your palette that's making it so dirty? I don't know. But anyways, one of my favorite things about working with the 1 month 1 shadow challenge was how it made me step out of my comfort zone. The drag queen like eye look that I did using this palette was something I would never do. It's definitely not something I would create again. I mean, probably for another 1 month 1 shadow challenge, or maybe with the right kind of dress and the right kind of hair and the right kind of overall get up, I might do something like that again, but that's definitely not something I have done in the past. And I got such good feedback on that look. People said it looked great on me. I don't know how, it just didn't look like me in that tutorial. But what I'm trying to say here is I would never have done that if it wasn't for the 1 month 1 shadow challenge. That is so different for me, and I love that this challenge helped me step out of my comfort zone a little bit. For example, the kind of colors that I played with and the way that I used them, I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for this challenge. For example, when I first saw this shade Jada, the only imagination in my head was that you could use this as a pop of color on your lower lash. That was what I envisioned when I saw this shade. That's it. But the very second look that I uploaded for this series was me using the shade Jada all over my lids. And I cannot believe how much I love the way that look turned out. I do love green eyeshadow, but I have never worn a very bright green all over my lids, which is the kind of green that this is. This is an unusual kind of green, and I definitely didn't think I would like wearing it all over my lids, but I was surprised at how much I loved that look. If you feel like this is a little out of your comfort zone and you cannot really work with this, then try wearing it on top of black liner. I mean, put some black liner and really blend it on your lid and then go over with it, and you would get that beautiful peacock teal, a dark blue-green kind of shade that a lot of people are now adding to their eyeshadow palettes. Subculture has one, Jeffree Star's palette has one. So you are seeing those colors everywhere and they're beautiful on the eyes. So you could totally try that. And that is such a beautiful way you could use this eyeshadow. So I really loved using that. Using these colors was one of my favorite things during this series. I love wearing green. I have a look using the green eyeshadow in the palette as well. And I love wearing green all over my eyes because I feel like it really complements my dark brown eyes. So I love that. But I've never worn a bright blue or a bright purple all over my lids, and those were actually my favorite looks from the entire series. The blue look and the purple look, I loved those looks. I really liked the one where I used 24/7 as well. This is a beautiful shade and I loved wearing it all over my lids. Obsessed is a beautiful all over the lids shade as well. It's such a nice shade. It's the classic champagne pinky kind of shade. The black gold smoky eye where I featured the shade Queen, it was just so much fun creating that look because it's just a classic. You know everyone's gonna love it. It's a universal look that's going to look good on every single person. It's not too out there, and it's just something that has always looked beautiful and it will always look beautiful in the future as well. So I really had fun creating that as well. What else? Yes, these two highlight shades are just beautiful. They are beautiful to highlight your brow bone with. I love mixing them in together. I love using Beam on its own. I love using Enlight on its own. Enlight is also a beautiful face highlight. It is what I'm wearing on my face as highlight on top of another highlight, but it is what's on top and I love it. It's beautiful. Pukey and Made for Each Other, I feel like are the two most used shades. I use them the most throughout the 1 month 1 shadow challenge because they made great transition and crease shades. I loved them. I'm really not a huge fan of pink eyeshadow. I made it a point that everyone knew that while I was working on this series. I did create a few looks using these pink eyeshadows that I didn't end up putting up because I wasn't a fan of how they turned out. I created a cut crease using the shade Faint, and I don't think I uploaded it. I never used Sissy in any of my looks. Even though I love the idea of a pink and yellow duochrome, I have so many eyeshadows like that look like that. I just can't seem to figure out a way to make them look good on me. I love keeping them in my kit and I love using them on people, but I just don't like the way they look on me. So I never used the shade Sissy in any of my looks. I also didn't ever use Fireworks, even though this looks like a good, promising shade. I didn't use the shade Hustle yet. And I'll explain why when I get to my review of the overall palette. And surprisingly enough, I also haven't used the shade Smoky But Natural, which is actually one of my favorite shades from the entire palette. I don't think I ended up using that. Or did I? I'm not sure. I don't think I used it, and I don't know why. But anyways, that's what I mean when I say I could easily create just as many looks as I've already created with this eyeshadow palette. Because I mean, there are still so many colors in this palette that I just feel like I haven't even explored yet. Alright, so now let's quickly talk about my final thoughts on this palette. Even though there are more than 1,000 reviews already up on the Jaclyn Hill palette, I feel like I'm in a good position to really review this palette after using it as much as I've used it. Almost used every single shade in this palette, used it for over a month. And I feel like I am in a good place to talk about this palette. So first and foremost, the quality is amazing. They're very pigmented, very buttery, very soft. Everyone's telling you that and they're all right. It's an amazing eyeshadow palette as far as the variety goes, as far as the quality and pigmentation goes. You will experience some fallout if you're not very careful because these eyeshadows are so pigmented and so soft. If you're not careful and if you don't tap off the excess from your brush, then you'll experience fallout. I always used to just tap off the excess and that's not an issue for me. Only when you're working with really, really dark shades, that's when it can be an issue. Obviously, I had to wear my hijab before sitting down to film videos. And so out of all the looks that I've created using this palette, I think there's only one look, the green purple smoky eye, where I did my eyes first and my face second. Other than that, I was always wearing my face makeup before I went in to create my eye looks. And I didn't have any complaints there. I didn't have any fallout. And finally, water resistance. You guys know I love talking about that. I'm a Muslim. I have to pray several times during the day. And for our prayer to purify ourselves, we have to wash our face. Not really wash with soap. We have to splash our face with water 3 times for our prayer. So I always like to talk about that because that's a good test of a good eyeshadow for me. If an eyeshadow can live up to that expectation, I feel like it's a good eyeshadow. I have $2, $3, $4 eyeshadows in my collection that are perfectly fine and that actually have lived up to those expectations. And then, sadly enough, there is the $49 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette that wasn't able to live up to those expectations and completely rubbed off on me after the second prayer. So with these, they were always there at the end of the day, even after 2 or 3 prayers. And that's excellent. That's excellent quality. You couldn't ask for more. Definitely, there's going to be a little fading. You're washing your face. That's completely standard. That is what I experience with all good eyeshadows in my collection. So as far as the quality goes, I really have no complaints there. It's a beautiful, wonderful eyeshadow. Jaclyn did such a good job when it came to the quality of these eyeshadows, and I think a lot of that credit goes to Morphe as well. But now let's quickly talk about a few things that I would change about this eyeshadow palette, because believe it or not, I would change a few things about this eyeshadow palette. First thing first, I mean, I'm definitely biased here, but do we really need 3 pinks in this eyeshadow palette? I know when you swatch them, they're all very different. They're different kinds of pinks. One is a silvery pink, one is a golden pink, one is just a pink pink. But I mean, do we really need 3 pinks? I'm definitely biased. I don't think pink eyeshadows look good on me, but I have some other colors in my mind, which is why I'm saying she could have skipped on one of these. She could have. And then, I mean, there are so many warm-toned matte eyeshadows, which all of them are different. When you swatch them, all of them have a different purpose, and I love all of them. But I think she could have compromised on 1 or 2 of these for the eyeshadows that I think she should have added in this palette. I feel like this palette seriously lacks a cool-toned, mid-toned matte eyeshadow. You do have a cool-toned dark brown here, but you don't really have anything cool toned as far as the transition shades or the crease shades is concerned. Every time I wanted to use the shade Hustle, which is a beautiful shade in the palette, and I could easily use it with some of the warm tones as well. But every time I tried creating a cool tone look with this eyeshadow palette, I always found myself wanting to have a cool toned pink or mauve or something like that in this eyeshadow palette that you could use to create cool tone eyeshadow looks. So I feel like that is definitely something that's missing here. Jaclyn has her own personality. She loves a warm toned eyeshadow palette. So I mean, she definitely wanted to create something that represented her. So this palette is perfect as a representation for Jaclyn Hill or for her. But I feel like for an ordinary girl, which is whom I dedicated this series to, I think if we had one cool toned mid-tone eyeshadow in this palette, that would have been perfect. Same thing with silver. I think if there was one silver in this eyeshadow palette and you could exclude one of these warm toned eyeshadows, I think that would have been great. For example, I feel like this one in Hillster and this one in Cranapple, they're different, but they're kind of same. I mean, on the eyes, they kind of look the same. So I feel like she could have definitely switched that up for a silver, and then you could have a universal beautiful palette. Oh, wait. There's one more thing that I feel like a lot of people have already talked about, and that's a matte highlight shade. I feel like that is also missing from this palette because you definitely need something to set your eyeshadow primer with. So I think that's definitely a good addition to have in a palette, but it's something that you could easily do with your face powder even. So I'm not very particular about that. But I do feel like she could have switched some of these warm-toned matte shades and one of these pinks for silver, as well as a cool-toned mid-tone matte shade. And that would have made this palette absolutely perfect for absolutely everyone. But let's not take away from the fact that she just did such an amazing job with this eyeshadow palette and made it so universal, and it came out such a beautiful palette, and I loved it. I didn't miss anything in my collection while using this palette, and that's huge. That's huge for me. So it was so much fun, you guys. I loved working on the 1 month 1 shadow challenge. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section down below, letting me know what other eyeshadow palettes you want to see me work on for this kind of a challenge. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, for all the support, all the comments, all the views on all of these series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys found it helpful, and I hope you guys want to see more. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.